Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Over on Instagram, I had you all vote on my next nail set, and I'm definitely getting into all the cozy fall vibes now. But first, I need to take off my current set, so I'm just going to use the Jello 1 Kill Remover to do that. As you guys can see, I've pretty much finished my first bottle, so I figured this was a great opportunity to show you guys exactly how the kit comes in. I actually keep 2 backup sets of Jello in my nail drawer, so yeah, I'm stocked. So this kit includes, of course, the Jello Peel Off Base Coat and the 1 Kill Remover, which is what I just ran out of. And it also comes with some wooden cuticle pushers to help lift and peel off your nails. I still have plenty of peel off base left, so I'm just thinking of applying 2 coats of it to my nails now. I've been using this system for I think about a year now, and as a content creator, I've gotten tons of use out of it. If you've been watching me since I first started using Jello, then you probably already know that I really love this stuff. It basically lets you peel off your nails without soaking them off, and in my experience, it works both with Gel-X and Polygel. Gel-X isn't too bad to remove. Like, you can soak them off, it just takes a little bit of time, but Polygel, that's a different story. You can't really soak it off, you have to file it off or scrape it off. And it can be a little bit harsh on your natural nails, especially if you do it wrong. So I like using this underneath my Polygel nails to just make removal so much more easier. Doing Polygel nail sets is actually what led me into starting to look for a peel off base gel in the first place. And once I found this one, it was pretty much a game changer and just makes everything so much more easier. Speaking of Polygel, we're going to be doing a Polygel set today. It's actually been a while, so I'm super excited. I won't be doing both of my hands because they both have the same design on both hands. So we're just going to be doing the one today. Also, I got this comment suggesting that I leave the 1 Kill Remover on a little bit longer. Supposedly, it just makes the removal process easier. And I was curious, so I did a little mini test here to do a comparison. So normally I leave the solution on for about 3 minutes and then I gently start to lift the edges to expose more of the nail, reapply the remover, and continue lifting after a few more minutes. But this time on my right hand, I applied the remover and just let it soak in while I was doing my regular thing on my left hand. And I definitely noticed a difference. After leaving the 1 Kill Remover on my right hand for about 10 minutes, then trying to lift it off, I could definitely tell it was a lot easier than when I only leave it on for 3 minutes. So yeah, how long you let it sit on definitely makes a difference. That being said, not all of the nails popped off super easily, only one did. A couple of them were still clinging on a little bit. I felt like it just needed a little bit more remover and maybe a little bit more time. But either way, I'm just going to start letting the 1 Kill Remover sit longer on my nails and really let it soak in. So thank you to that one person who dropped the tip. I'm definitely going to be continuing that method. So based on my Instagram poll, this nail set right here is the one that won. It's like a super pretty fall floral French with all these different tones of brown. It kind of reminds me of like summer nail sets that I've done before. It's like a perfect transition from summer to fall. The browns give it that warm, cozy vibe, but the florals kind of give it like a little taste of summer still, and I'm just obsessed with this look. But alright, let's get right into prep. First thing I'm doing is trimming my natural nails down so that they don't peek out from underneath my extensions. Next, I'm going to go in with cuticle prep. I'm using the Model 1's cuticle remover, and I'll apply that a little bit around my cuticle area. I let it sit for about 10 to 15 seconds. Then gently push back my cuticles with a cuticle pusher. You don't want to leave it on for too long, no more than a minute. I also like to trim off any loose skin from pushing back the cuticles. This step isn't a must, but I just like to do it to give a cleaner look. I only cut the loose, dead skin. Then I'll lightly buff my natural nails with a 180 grit buffer. You can also use a sanding band to make this faster, but I'm just doing it really gently and manually because I'm not going to keep these nails on for too long. Next, I'm using the Jello Peel Off Base Coat. This goes underneath your gel extensions and makes them super easy to remove later on using the 1 Kill Remover. I'm applying a thin coat of this to my natural nails, and actually I did 2 coats this time, just because I had a lot of extra Jello Peel Off Base Coat lying around. And then cure each coat in your lamp for 60 seconds. Now moving on to the nail tips, I'm using these extra long square, non-C-curve tips from Unigella. First, I'm sizing out each tip to make sure that it fits perfectly from sidewall to sidewall. You want it to fully cover your natural nail, no overlapping, but also no gaps where your natural nail peeks through. Once I've found all my sizes, I'm just going to set them aside and get ready to apply them. Of course, I'm going to bring out my gooseneck lamp for this part because I'm going to be flash curing the tips on. I'm using the Jello again as an adhesive. I apply a little bit to the inside edge of the nail tip, coating that whole area. Then I'm going to carefully place the tip onto my free edge of my natural nail and flash cure it with the gooseneck lamp for about 15 seconds, just until it holds its place. Once that's done, I move on to the next nail and repeat the same thing for all of them. After all the tips are flash cured and locked in, I pop my whole hand in my big lamp for 60 seconds to fully cure. Now I'm just going to go ahead and trim down the nail tips. I decided to shorten them a little bit to match the look I was going for. Then using my nail drill, I'm setting it to 8,000 RPM and gently blending the nail tips into my natural nails. I'm being extra careful here, keeping the drill parallel to my nail plate so that I don't overfile or accidentally remove the Jello peel off base coat. And I'm using a 180 grit sanding band for this step. Once everything is blended nicely, I move on to etching the lengths of the nail tips. This step is super important if you're using Polygel, so don't skip it. If you don't roughen up the surface a little bit, the product won't stick well and it'll just start to lift. Trust me, I've learned this the hard way, so make sure that the nails are given a good buff so that the Polygel has something to grip onto. After that, I grabbed a 180 grit hand file to clean up the shape and make everything look a little bit more crisp. I filed along the sidewalls to make sure everything was straight and aligned, and then I filed the free edge of my extensions too. And I actually trimmed the tips down just a little bit more to match the inspiration picture better. And just repeated those filing steps. And because I did so much filing, some of the dust started to stick to my Jello peel off base. The base leaves a little bit of a tacky layer, so I had to clean that up. I took some isopropyl alcohol and a lint-free wipe and gently removed the dust before moving on. Now I'm going to grab a base coat and apply it to both my natural nail and the nail extension. The base coat helps the product adhere better to both the tip and my natural nail, so don't skip this step. And I'm curing it for 60 seconds in my big lamp to set it in. At this point, I was kind of going back and forth on which base color I should use. I really wanted to get as close as possible to the inspiration picture. The color I ended up picking was a Siesta from Macart. It's a gorgeous, warm nude that pairs really well with browns, so I figured it would be the perfect choice, and I think it was a pretty good match overall. For the Polygel application, we're going to need a dampen dish. I've got this cute little glass one right here to hold my liquid, and for my liquid, I'm going to be using isopropyl alcohol. You'll also need a couple of lint-free wipes and a dual-ended Polygel brush. So here I am pouring the isopropyl alcohol into my dampen dish. This will be my slip solution to help maneuver the Polygel around my nail. First, I make sure my brush is fully saturated with the alcohol, and then I use one of my lint-free wipes to drain the excess liquid. And I'm just going to repeat this step throughout the process, whenever I need my brush to be just the right amount of saturation. For this first bead, I like to apply it to the tip of my natural nail all the way down to the tip of my extension, and I'm just going to gently tap it into place. I'm going to make it spread evenly from sidewall to sidewall. You want to use very light tapping motions to move the Polygel around. I'm not dragging the product or anything, I'm just using tapping motions, because using sweeping motions can sometimes trap the Polygel in the brush. We're going to want to do that as little as possible. Just keep tapping the product until it reaches both edges of your nail, and once that's done and it's evenly spread out, you'll want to blend the top part into your natural nail. This step will just flatten that lump here and ensure a smooth transition, so that the next bead lays down better. Then lastly, you're going to want to do those swiping motions to remove any excess Polygel. Not only does this help with cleanup, but it also makes the shape a lot better and less lumpy. So keep your brush a little bit more saturated than usual with the alcohol to prevent the Polygel from sticking to your brush, and just keep swiping it down the nail to remove all that excess Polygel. I like to use the spatula end of my brush to cut off any of the excess. Then you can cure that bead for 90 seconds until it's fully set. For the second bead, I like to pick it up with the spatula end of my brush again to place it directly underneath the cuticle. Make sure to leave just a little gap between the cuticle and the polygel and expose some of that natural nail. This gives you room to mold it without accidentally flooding the cuticle. If you place it too close to the cuticle, it can slip into the skin, and that's not what we want. So leaving a tiny gap is key. Now, just like the first bead, start patting the gel down from sidewall to sidewall, but before you reach the sidewalls completely, start angling your brush and tucking the gel near the cuticle and the sidewalls. Try not to get it on your skin, but if it does happen, don't worry, we're going to clean that up later. But just keep tucking that gel near the skin, leaving a tiny gap between the gel and your actual skin. Then you can flatten out the excess polygel by swiping it down again. Be careful not to apply too much pressure because we're still building our apex. For long nails like these, you want to maintain just a little slight apex. So as you pull the gel down, just keep that structure in mind. If there's any excess polygel at the tip of your nail, you can again just cut it off. I did have a little bit of polygel leaking onto my skin, and this can definitely cause lifting, so we're going to fix this. I took a clean brush right here and used some acetone to carefully swipe along the cuticle area. This helped create a very small gap between the polygel and my skin, and once everything was cleaned up and nothing was touching my skin, I cured it in my lamp for another 60 seconds. And that's it for that nail. Now you have a perfectly formed polygel nail with a very nice apex. I sometimes get asked if I do multiple nails at a time, and honestly, it just depends on how fast you can work with polygel. Sometimes I'll do 2 nails at a time, but I've never tried doing more than that. I think it's all about your level of comfort. If you're just starting this, I'd recommend sticking to 1 nail at a time, and once you get the hang of it, you can maybe try 2, but that's just my suggestion. I'm going to repeat the same process on all of my nails using the same color, and I'll speed up the footage and throw in some music. Alright, now that the polygel is fully cured, we can now remove the sticky inhibition layer. I'm using some isopropyl alcohol to wipe it off, but you can also use acetone if that's what you prefer. Now it's time for the filing. I'm using the same 180 grit sanding band I used earlier for my extensions. My nail shape wasn't too bad, but it definitely needed a little bit of refining. So I'm just going to go back and forth across the nail tip to even things out and remove any excess product. You just want to keep filing back and forth until the entire surface is smooth and evenly roughened up. If you notice any areas that aren't scratched or roughened up, it just means you have to keep going. The surface is probably still a little bit lumpy, so you just got to continue going back and forth. I'm filing at 20,000 RPM for this step, and I also like to file the tip here a little bit to perfect the shape. Once that's done, I lower my drill speed to around 6,000 RPM for the cuticle area. I don't like to go any higher than that when I'm working near my cuticle area, but I'm just going to file this area to make sure that the polygel sits flatter and more flush with my nail. If you did a good job with your cuticle bead, you probably don't need to do much here, but for me, I was left with like a slightly rounded cuticle area, so I just needed to flatten it out a bit. I'm zooming you guys in so you guys can see what I mean, but I'm just removing that extra product that's lingering to give my nail a better shape. Now I'm going to go in with my 180 grit hand file and filing the edges of my nails to straighten them out. This is that one step in the filing process that really helps perfect the shape and pull everything together, and it just makes your shape super crisp. Last thing I'm doing for filing is taking a buffing block and gently buffing the lengths of my polygel nails. It doesn't have to be perfect, just like a quick 30-second buff on each nail makes a huge difference. I'm using the softer side of my buffer just to smooth everything out. After filing, I like to wash my hands with soap and water to get rid of all of that dust. Then I go back in with some rubbing alcohol to cleanse my nails and remove any leftover oils from the soap. If there's any stubborn dust stuck around the cuticle area, you can use a manicure brush to scrub that off, but I'm mostly just wiping everything down with some alcohol before moving on. Now I'm applying a matte top coat all over my nails. This step is going to make the surface so much more smoother before we go in with the French tips. Even though I already buffed my nails, the matte top coat just makes everything so much more smoother, which really helps with nail art. If you don't have a matte top coat, you can use a shiny top coat as well. That's totally fine too. Alright, let's talk colors. These are the three main shades I'm using for this look. We're going to need a pale brown, a light brown, and a dark brown. The pale brown and dark brown I have are really close to the ones in the inspiration picture. Honestly, I think it's a near perfect match. But for some reason, I don't have a close light brown in my collection, which I definitely need to get. So I had to get a little bit creative here. I'm using this brown gel from my Model 1's Christmas kit, and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of their white gel polish to make a lighter brown. It's not exactly like the photo, but it's pretty close, and I was happy with how it turned out. The two perfect shades I'm using from Madame Glam, the lighter one is called Cake Batter, and the darker one is Midnight Hour. I used this color first, and I'm just going to start painting a French tip on my ring nail using that color. I used a 12mm liner brush for all of my Frenchies, and I'm going to do the V method today. This method is super beginner friendly. Basically, you just want to paint a line deciding how deep you want your French to be. Then you want to create your V shape, and finally connect those lines to complete the French. Once I was happy with the smile line, I filled in the rest of the French using the gel polish brush directly from the bottle. And to really get into those corners and around the sidewalls, I grabbed the liner brush again and filled in any of those gaps. I also decided to make the thumbs the same color, but honestly you could do whatever feels right for the thumb. If you're following the inspiration picture, I think that the light brown and the dark brown would be a good choice for the thumb. It's not visible in the picture, but if the pointer and pinky fingers have the lightest brown color, the thumb could either match the dark brown or the light brown. Now I'm switching colors. I just like to wipe my brush on a lint-free wipe instead of cleaning it completely, since I'm just going from gel to gel. This way I just remove any excess product and move on to the next color. So I'm going to dip my brush into Cake Batter from Madame Glam and saturating my bristles again to paint my French tips. This color is a little bit less pigmented than the other browns, so I ended up needing 2 coats. Just make sure to cure each layer for 60 seconds so that each coat is not undercured. I painted this on my index finger and my pinky finger, and since I'm doing 2 coats, I wiped the sidewalls with a lint-free wipe before curing the first coat. This will just help keep the shape super sharp, and it'll just help prevent the second coat from building too much on the sidewalls. Then for my middle nail, I'm using Midnight Hour, which is the darkest brown in this set. I was really surprised I only needed 1 coat for this. It went on so perfectly. If you want it to be a little bit darker though, you can definitely go in with a second coat. I was kind of liking the first coat, so I left it like that. And since there's going to be a flower on top of this French, the French does not need to be perfect because the flower will honestly cover most of it anyways. Honestly, this brown is like a total fall staple, guys. I used it in my last video too. It's like the perfect brown for fall nails, and I honestly see myself using this a lot in upcoming designs, especially for the brown sets. If there's one gel polish I'd recommend from this whole video, I think it's going to be this one. It's definitely giving a must-have for fall sets. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit conflicted about which color I should use for the nail art. These little streak patterns looked like a lighter shade of brown than this dark brown that I'm using, but at the same time, I wondered if maybe it was the dark brown after all. I really couldn't tell, so I just decided to go with a slightly lighter brown called Spiced Cinnamon, also from Madame Glam, which by the way smells exactly like cinnamon. It's so good. You could honestly use the darkest brown or something like this if you want. It's really not that serious in the end. I just felt like going for the lighter shade because why not? So I used that to create little streaks and dots. It was super easy stuff. You can just follow along what I'm doing here on screen, and I was really impressed with how simple this all was. It's one of those nail designs that look a little bit difficult, but once you start doing it, you kind of realize this is pretty easy. I honestly think that this is super beginner friendly. Honestly, if you can paint a French tip, you can definitely do this design. Nail art like this is just super fun and stress-free, and it just feels more like therapy than anything else. For these little dots, I made sure to place them on the outer edges of the streaks, not inside of them. And here's a little tip. Don't dip your dotting tool back into the polish until you start another line of dots. That way the dots will gradually get smaller as you go along the streak, which kind of creates like a bigger to smaller pattern. It's like you're using the last bit of polish on the dotting tool to make those dots shrink as you go. Next, I'm going to use the blooming gel from a cart. This is basically what's going to create that cool crocodile print effect on the French tip. If you want it to look just right, make sure that you cover the entire French. And try not to get any part of it on the base color. Definitely don't skimp on those sidewalls either. You want to coat the entire French evenly so that the bloom spreads really nicely across the whole French. Once you've applied this, leave it wet and do not cure it. Just grab a dotting tool and start creating those little streaks. I did mine kind of angled and circular. It wasn't like completely straight. And my first attempt at this, I wanted to show you guys that it does work, but the dotting tool I used was just a little bit large, so it made the pattern more larger, which is totally fine by the way, but it didn't look like the inspiration picture, and I wanted to get it as close to the inspiration as possible, so I wiped that off and I switched to a smaller dotting tool. Essentially, the smaller dotting tool picks up less product, which means that the blooming design will be smaller and more precise, much closer to the inspo picture. And as you can see here, there is quite a bit of a difference. So as it was blooming, I wiped the sidewalls gently with a lint-free wipe to smooth out any lumps or excess product leaking on the sides. This step is super important if you want to keep your nails looking sharp and crisp instead of bulky. After you let it bloom for about 10 seconds, go ahead and cure it under your big lamp for 60 seconds. I'm going to go ahead and use a white non-stick extension gel to create my little flower. In my last video, I made the mistake of making my petals a little bit too big, so this time I definitely kept it on the smaller side, and it definitely made a big difference. I'm going to roll the gel into 5 little pieces for 5 petals of my flower, and before placing them, I like to put a little bit of base coat where I want my flower to go, because from experience, these gel pieces don't stick well to a matte top coat. So a little base coat helps everything hold better. I made sure to cure that for 60 seconds, and then check out this mad skill. I'm placing the petals onto my flowers without actually touching the gel. Quick heads up, you do not want to touch this gel with your bare fingers since it's uncured, and if you do so, you could risk getting a gel allergy. If you want to use your fingers, please wear some gloves, or better yet, use tools like I do. Just avoid touching the gel directly. I arranged my flower like this and then pressed the petals down gently with my little pencil-shaped silicone tool. Honestly, this flower was super easy to make. Just press the inside of each petal down flat. There's no fancy shaping or anything. It's just simple and round, and I repeated that for all the petals. I'm quickly showing you guys how I cleaned off my little lid I was rolling my gel onto. I just wipe it down with some isopropyl alcohol, not acetone, and then pop it under my lamp for 60 seconds. This cures any leftover gel molecules on the surface, and then it's good to go. Once my flower is cured for 60 seconds, I'm going to paint it with that cake batter gel polish. I ended up doing 2 coats once again because it was just a little bit sheer, but 2 coats worked perfectly. For my line work inside the flower, you can use any dark brown. I went in with spiced cinnamon, the same polish I used for the nail art on my pointer and pinky nails. I just painted thin, straight lines extending from the center of the flower. Then I used that same dark brown gel polish to outline the edges of my petals. And it's super easy. The dark brown basically blends into the French tips. And once that's done, just make sure everything is fully cured. Next, I'm going to use some rhinestone glue and place a little bit in the middle of my flower. And I'm just going to add 3 tiny gold caviar beads to the center and just cure that in place. All that's left to do now is top coat the nails. I'm using the Model 1's glossy top coat today. Honestly, this is such an underrated top coat. It self-levels beautifully and it gives off a really nice shine, so I definitely recommend it. For the final step, especially with square nails, I like to do a little finishing file on the tips. It just makes the shape extra crispy and polished, and trust me, it makes a huge difference. Now I'm going to apply some cuticle oil. This one is from Blossom. It's their hot cocoa cuticle oil, and I'm just going to use it to rehydrate and moisturize around my cuticles and my nails. And here are the finished nails. They're so freaking cute. I'm literally obsessed with this color scheme and design. Everything about it just feels so perfect and pretty. I definitely recommend this look for anyone who's just getting into nails or starting out. I'm going to let you guys choose my next few nail sets on my Instagram. If you guys want to join in on the vote and help me pick my next nail designs for YouTube, make sure you give me a follow and I'll pop up my handle on the screen here. Thank you guys so much for watching and voting. I hope you guys found this tutorial helpful and fun. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next video.